Good afternoon, everyone. We are just so glad that you are joining us for Q&A this afternoon. It has been quite a interesting Sabbath here in Loma. We brought out the sweaters and the cold gear for our rainy and gloomy Sabbath, but we are so glad that you're joining us from wherever you are. And we have some wonderful guests today. I have some colleagues and a couple of friends who will be joining us, and I would like to introduce them to you at this time. But before I do that, actually, I want to say a huge thank you to Zach, who does all of the behind the scenes for Q&A. He's done it faithfully every week, and we cannot thank him enough. We wish we could bring his picture up here, but a shout out to Zach for all he does for us each Sabbath. I would like to let you know now who will be joining us. We have Pastor Josh, we have Pastor Miguel, and also Bernie Anderson from Florida and Doreen Squire from Kentucky. So we want to invite them in at this time as we get started. And we'll be talking a little bit today about Pastor Josh's sermon. Pastor Josh, you were looking quite dapper today and had a great message.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's good to be here with you guys this afternoon.
Let's take a look over at the comments. If those of you who are joining us, we'd love to see where you are from. So if you are joining us now, we would love to see where all around the world you are coming to us from. Hi, Dave Bell. Nice to have you here. Lolita from British Columbia. Welcome. It's a delight to have you here. Also, we have Keith Thompson from Santa Rosa. And yeah, Dave from PUC, New Zealand. Anthony, welcome. And Brianna from right here in Loma Linda. Marianne, happy Sabbath from Redlands. Oh, Naples, Florida. Julie. And she's giving you kudos for your sermon, Josh. Did you see that one right there? Bernie, how far is Naples from you?
That's about a 3-hour drive. It's not bad at all. In fact, I've visited a number of times. I love that part of Florida.
Oh, wow.
So welcome, Julie.
I have never been. We have New York City here with Rio. Wonderful. Well, we are so glad that all of you are here. Oh, and I see Judy Jacobson. Hi, Judy. She's on San Juan Island there. We're glad that you are joining us today as well. So as more people are coming on, we just want to let you know that this month our series is entitled First, Second, Third, Fourth. And it's a series that is helping us find out how to prioritize this year and what things are important. Pastor Randy kicked us off with a sermon that was about God and how to prioritize God in our lives. Last week, we had Pastor Philip, who talked about family and the importance of family and how to prioritize family in our lives. And this week was Pastor Josh, who was talking about work and the importance of work in our lives and, making important priorities with work. And so that's what we're going to focus on today is the workplace and what that looks like. But before we start with specifics with that, I just want to give those who have joined us here the opportunity to share a little bit about themselves and kind of, if you would, Bernie, we'll start with you. And then if you could just share a little bit of, I use the word evolution, but just kind of a summary of your work experience after you tell us a little bit about yourself personally, and then what you're currently doing.
Yeah, right on. So first of all, hi, everyone. Good to see you. Good to see everyone. Josh, great message. I listened to it right before jumping on and really appreciated that. So Good to see everyone. Yeah, I am currently living in the Orlando, Florida area, and I am married, have been for 26 years. I have 3 incredible daughters. Their names are Madison, Brooklyn, and Liberty. That's a New York City theme for anyone out there who's in New York City. We have so it's interesting in terms of the work evolution. I'm glad you mentioned that. Mine is actually fairly short. If I count all of the jobs I had like growing up, when I learned work ethic, I had the paper route, and it was more of a family paper route. So lots of my cousins and my family, we participated. We get up early, roll newspapers, and I learned about kind of the value of work and a work ethic. I worked at a used tire shop my grandfather owned growing up, and really learned the value of work. They gave me an interesting option, actually. A lot of times they said, you can go to church or you can go to work. And I often chose work over church, I'll be honest. So that was part of my upbringing. But I loved working, and realized that you can get money when you work, which is really nice. My adult work life, the evolution there has really been simple. I have primarily worked in ministry. And so from summer camp ministry all the way, entering pastoral ministry, like right out of college at 22, like so many people who take that path do. And for 23 years, I was a Seventh-day Adventist pastor, and just in the last few years transitioned to work for a large NGO called World Vision. So that's kind of the evolution. And but it's been I'm looking forward to this discussion because it's very fitting for me right now, because I had all kinds of identity issues when I went from being a pastor to working for a large NGO. I didn't know who I was. I'm like, so.
Well, I can guess that you have found yourself now after.
Doing better. It's been hard.
It's been hard, but it's been 2 or 3 years since you've made that transition.
I just, November was 3 years for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Bernie. It's so great to have you here. And Doreen, what about you? A little bit of your personal, with your family, and then kind of your evolution with work and what you're doing currently.
Okay, I'm Doreen Squire, and greetings from Kentucky. We live in Lexington, the horse capital of the world. It's beautiful here with the rolling hills and the green grass or bluegrass. I was born and raised here and grew up with a pretty strong work ethic too. Both my parents are from Germany directly, and as a lot of people know and understand, Germans are very much about hard work and getting things done, and movers and shakers. So growing up, we had a family business that my father had started when they came over from Germany. He and his parents came over from Germany when he was 15 on a boat into New York Harbor. And he actually finished engineering school, and then started a machine shop there in New York. And a customer came to him and guaranteed him $10,000 worth of business a year if he would continue the quality of parts, which he did. And then they moved to Lawrenceburg, Kentucky, and they needed his company to move to Kentucky as well. So that's when they came to Lexington. And so I was kind of born into that environment. And growing up, I remember, after school, either dad picking me up or one of the employees picking me up and taking me by work, and then I'd have to file paperwork or something. Didn't get paid for it, but it was just part of the job. And then going to high school and college, my spring breaks and my summer breaks were pretty much working at the business. We are a manufacturing business. We manufacture textile equipment for the garment industry. So the belt loops on your pants, we don't make the belt loops, but our machines sew them. They're automated machinery that sews it to the garment. Your snaps and rivets on your pants, we don't make the hardware, but we make the machines that attach the hardware to the garment. So that's kind of was my background growing up. And I remember specifically one summer coming home from college and saying, I've had it. Some of my friends don't have to go to work every day. And so Dad, I'm staying home. I'm not going to work all summer. And so my dad was like, okay, Well, the next morning I get up and there's a list of cleaning out the garage, mowing the grass, and we lived on 16 acres. So there were plenty of projects to do. And after a few days of that, I decided I'm going into work. At least I get paid for what I do at work. But that was always very much a focus when I did take business in school. And when I got out, I remember my father sitting both my brother and I down and saying, listen, just because our family has a business, you're not going into it just being the boss. You have to be an employee like everyone else starting out. You got to start out like full time, like everyone else. You need to be here at a certain time. You need to put forth the effort and carry your load. And, you know, we are now, obviously my brother and I run the business now, and we own the business, but we weren't just given that out of school. That was something that we had to work for. And, you know, looking back, I really appreciate that because it developed in us, not this just, okay, sit back, put it in my lap, I have it now. No, it was something we had to work for. And, you know, my father's no longer, he has dementia, and so he's not in the business anymore. But the principles of the work ethic that he taught us have just been something that I carried throughout my lifetime, and we want to do that to our daughter too. I'm married for 13 years. In fact, that's how I know JoJo. Is my husband was good friends with her and in California, and we've been married for about 13 years, over 13 years, and we have a daughter, 10, and she comes to work with me some after school. I'll have projects for her to do, so I'm kind of continuing that on.
Wonderful. Thank you, Doreen, for sharing. How about Pastor Josh? What about you? I know everyone knows you're a pastor here at the University Church, but what's a little bit of background? I know in your sermon you were talking about, was it McDonald's? I forget where you were talking about some of your work background and the evolution of what brought you here to Loma Linda.
Yeah, so it was better than McDonald's. It was Wendy's.
Wendy's, sorry.
Yeah.
My bad. I apologize.
Yeah, well, I mean, I grew up, work was always very much part of our family. I grew up in Newfoundland. I don't know if there's any Newfies who are listening. Newfoundland is in Canada, for those who don't know, little eastern island. So we had a wood furnace in our house. We'd go out, you know, during the week, we'd go out to the forest. My grandpa had land. We'd all get in the back of the truck and go chop wood for our wood fest. I'm making myself sound like I'm like 80 years old or something right now, but so yeah, you know, moved to British Columbia, Canada. Got my first job at Wendy's, which was I loved it. Absolutely loved Wendy's. Working the grill, drive-through. I love the rush of, you know, getting that supper rush. Then, you know, worked at summer camps during my college years, and Mountain View Summer Camp up in British Columbia. Worked at, coming out of college, had my theology degree, worked at Church in the Valley up in Langley, British Columbia. And now I have the privilege of working here at Loma Linda University Church.
And we love having you here. That's quite a lot for your, how many years? You don't have to tell me your age, but that's a lot. You've done a lot in your short life span. Thanks for sharing. Pastor Miguel, what about you? What is kind of your evolution with work and getting here to Loma Linda?
So I'm still evolving, I think. Yeah, I grew up in California, and when I was 15, my dad surprised me for my 15th birthday with a job application, and that started romance with employment. Realized pretty quickly that I didn't like manual labor. Those who know me will not be surprised by that. And so during my time in college, I actually got certified to be a federal and state court interpreter. And so I did that for a while. And out of college, I jumped into ministry, and I've done pretty much everything there is to do in ministry, from being a youth pastor to leading a church to being now part of this wonderful staff here at Loma Linda.
Thank you for sharing. I love the fact that you were given an application to fill out at 15 to jumpstart you. Do you think if you hadn't been given that you might still be waiting on the couch somewhere, waiting to start your work life?
Most definitely. Again, those that know me will also know that I've been in school for the past 25 years. So I probably would still be in school as a student somewhere. So thanks, Dad.
Oh, thanks all of you. Yeah, Bernie, were you going
I was
to
going to say, it almost seems like we had this kind of cultural expectation that at 16, you go and get a job. It was 15 for you, Miguel, but it felt like when I was growing up, around the same time I was trying to get that driver's license, my family was trying to push me into the workforce, and I, had to embrace it. But, it was a good thing. It was a good thing.
The family helps set us in motion, don't they? It's good to have that background, I think, for our discussion today, just to give individuals an idea of your background, and that plays into your perspective with the topic with work. And Pastor Josh, you were talking in the beginning, or at the beginning of your message to all of us today, about culture and this identity and value that we place on ourselves from work. And you were mentioning we're becoming overachievers, or possibly just our focus is so different than that of Christ and his ministry. And we all face choices every day, choices to follow the messages that the world is giving us on the expectations and values of life, or that with the example of Jesus, which you brought up in your message, and the example that he gives us of the way we should be doing things. So there's constantly this battle between what the world is telling us is good and that we need to be pursuing, and that need to be our value system. And then there's that Jesus gives through his example of what is important and what we should value, especially when it comes to work. And you really highlighted the thing about value and identity. And I see that so often in people, that their value and their identity is in what they do for work, how much they can produce, how much they can do, how much income they make. And it really sometimes can taint our focus and our priorities, which is what we're talking about. So I'm just curious, with any of you who would like to answer this, is there a time in your life that you felt like that identity or that value in work, that focus and your priorities may have not aligned with where God was calling? Did you feel like they kind of got shuffled because of maybe the environment you were in or the people you associated with? Is there a time that you can share when you felt that your focus and your priorities were not healthy with work?
I think, Joelle, for me, it was, I was single till about 39 is when I got married. So I was single quite a bit after I got out of school. I didn't go right out of school from getting married to all that. So I did get involved in our business and our family business, and I traveled some. But for me, what really kind of made me realize that maybe I don't know if you want to say lost my real identity, was when I got married and had a child. all of a sudden it really helped my priorities as far as putting things in perspective. And I guess when you're single, at least for me, that was my life. You know, I did go to church and stuff, but that was my whole focus was, you know, going to work, making sure everything got done and making sure we met the deadlines we needed to meet and kind of exceeded the goals we wanted to have in building the business and in just helping it to continue to grow and function and thrive. But I will say that having a child and a family really helped you kind of ask yourself, am I just here to go to work and get things done and bring home a paycheck and have a good life? And you realize when you have children, for me anyway, that that's not all it is. I have this gift that God gave me that I'm responsible for, that we are responsible for, and that he's going to ask back when he comes in the clouds of heaven. And so that was one time, I guess, that I kind of repurposed or had a direction change. And the other was when I was single, we had kind of joined, our business had joined an organization called ASI, Adventist Services and Industry. And I don't know if any of you have heard of it. It's a very, very good organization. And it's an organization in which is their Seventh-day Adventists that either own or operate their own businesses or ministries. So there's kind of a two-sided thing to it. And that was really amazing to me, is to kind of go to a convention with like 3,000 people. They're Adventist. They own and operate their businesses themselves. They have the similar challenges and the focus they had, that we're not just here to make lots of money. We're not here just to build up a big retirement. We're here because God needs us. He needs our resources. He needs our talents and our abilities to further the work for him. So that was another time that really just kind of helped me refocus, so to speak.
Thank you so much for sharing that, Doreen. It's amazing the situations that we find ourselves in, or the things that happen to us, like having a child, getting married, that help us realign and refocus. Is there anyone else before we move on that would like to share a time that, and the reason I bring this up, no one wants to like share the struggles, right? But I think it's so important to be real and authentic. Not everything is peachy and just perfect in life. And we all struggle with times when we feel like we're not quite doing what we should be or know we ought to. And sometimes I think we just don't know. We just don't have enough, I don't know, insights or perspective, or maybe we're so distracted that we don't even realize for a while that we may not be right on the target that we want. But Bernie, what were you gonna share?
I remember transitioning from a 2-church district. That's kind of how we all start out as pastors a lot of times, to my first like single bigger church, which wasn't really big. But it was big enough, right, that I could just have one church. I was like, wow. And I think as pastors, you naturally fight this constant need to people please, right? That's like the kryptonite to pastors. And I fought that all throughout my pastoral ministry. And so when you get to a new space and a new church and a great church and an opportunity to really make an impression, you just go all in. And I think in terms of my personal sense of value and dignity and worth got lost in that desire to just people please. And it wasn't people please as much as I wanted to be successful, and I wanted to impress people, and I wanted people to think I was a good pastor, right? Nobody wants to be the guy that's the bad pastor, right? You want to be the good pastor, right? And so I dove into that, and I think I just lost sight of who am I really here to be, to serve. And ultimately, you're right. I serve God, and I should lead in such a way that is God honoring. And so constantly being accessible to my church wasn't the healthiest thing. Constantly responding to every little message from every little person, like immediately, constantly feeling like I had to be at every single thing when the doors opened at the church. And I grew through that I served 8 years in that church, and actually Salt Lake City, Utah, and I grew big time, and I learned. So for the next position I took, I was much more conscious of just being human. I think in the church ministry space, because just the nature of ministry is it's so integrated with our lives, and it can often take over life in ministry. So, but I'll let somebody else share.
I think that's really good, and I think that during this time, this pandemic, I think has been very eye-opening to a lot of people, and what is my identity? Like, a lot of our dreams and plans have kind of fallen flat, and you're kind of left sitting in your house in your boxers on Zoom going, who am I? And so I think that has definitely been a time where a lot of us are going, wow, like all of a sudden you go from the 24/7 hustle bustle to it's different. But I think it's also a point that I don't think it's completely negative to find your identity in your job or your career. I don't want to come, I don't want to necessarily put full negativity on that, because I believe that a lot of times people's purpose is in that, maybe as a pastor or your business, you might find your identity in that God-given purpose, which is very much rooted in your career, your job. So I think sometimes there's this, we kind of, your identity as a child of God, and that's wonderful and beautiful, but God is, as a child of God, God has placed on you a personality. He's placed on you a purpose, and maybe that that purpose is so rooted in what you do. So sometimes you're stripped away from that. You're for right now, maybe you're removed from that purpose. Because of COVID, you don't have the opportunity to engage in that. I wouldn't say it's a completely negative thing to find your identity in that. Now I think we have to you can go deeper into that. And so I think sometimes we kind of put that blanket statement on, we need to find our identity in God and not your job. Well, I think sometimes there's complexities that go hand in hand with each. Yeah.
Yeah. Well said. Thanks for sharing that. It's hard to find the balance, I think. When I was listening to your message, I was thinking the same thing. Like, some things are negative, or they come across negative if they get out of balance. But like you said, it's not all negative if you're finding purpose and mission, which as Adventists and Christians, a lot of who we are and who we raise our children and younger generations to be is typically in professions that are service driven, whether you're a pastor or not. I mean, we're here in Loma Linda on a huge campus, education, to educate people, and with the hospital, so medical. So even those of us here who are pastors, those in other professional workplaces are very much service driven as well. And so it's hard, I think, for people to find that balance of work and service, and you're doing a good job, but then that going overboard to being a workaholic, to not being able to spend time with their families now because they're so focused on the mission and service that sometimes they're becoming maybe neglectful in other aspects of their life, which it's challenging. I have not found balance yet. That's like my lifelong mission. And it seems like I get worse at it than better the more I try. I don't know about you guys.
I think that's a great point. And I think that the danger is we can get consumed by our calling, because everything you said, Josh, I mean, and Joel, you both made the point that there is something to us being in the work that we do. It's not, by accident. It's God. We all felt that urging and that calling. And then the challenge for us is to take this beautiful gift of calling and what Christ gave us, and then try to perform that balancing act or appropriately live into it, that in such a way that it glorifies God. And when that gets out of whack and it doesn't glorify God anymore, and it isn't a gift to us anymore, then we got to check the gauges and see what's out of whack. And like you said, get it back into the right place. And I don't know if balance is the right word as much as maybe a satisfaction or God honoring type of work. But I'm with you on that. I think there is something to purpose on calling and being in the space where God places us. So
yeah. Thank you for sharing. I want to move on a little bit to some other elements of the message, Josh, that you shared with us, which was fantastic. I love your first point of work down, not up, and that your boss is the CEO of the universe. Very good. So I want to just talk about that concept of work down, not up. And for whoever is joining us from wherever you're at, God has all placed us in different domains, different places of work. And I know there's always been this debate with stay-at-home moms, like, I don't work, they don't feel like they're contributing to anything. And I think based on what I've seen my mom put up with my brother, not me, but based on what I've seen mothers have to do, that is huge work, and I think they can put some of these same things principles that we'll be discussing here to their roles as mothers and in any line of work. So work down, not up. Josh, you were talking about basically looking at Christ, which is obviously what we need to be doing, but I don't think we often intentionally think about that. Like, what is Christ? How did he work? What was he like in the workplace or in his work environment? And, him putting others before himself, which is, oh my goodness, so hard for us to do in this day and age. And I think especially for our younger generations who are being programmed very differently through media, through their intake. It's really a me and I driven society that we now live in. But I'm just curious if you can share some ways that you, in the role that you now fill, World Vision, Doreen, you at the warehouse and when you're working there, and as pastors, Josh and Miguel, how exactly do you implement work down, not up in your line of work? What does that look like? Because I think some practical examples or what you guys are doing would be very helpful for all of our listeners today. Is there anything you would like to share about that? How that looks in your world?
I think in any arena that you work, we typically like things that are tangible, and we like things that we can quantify. And so the danger and the temptation to measure our work by quantifiable things is always present. Output, whether it's you're working in the private sector and you want to make sure that stock's going well, that your product is doing well in the marketplace, or you're working in ministry and you begin to look at people as commodities, and you're constantly being worried about how many people you're baptizing or how many people are coming to church. I think the first step is you need to get comfortable with living in a space that is not quantifiable, that you can't easily measure, because you can't measure the impact that you have on people's lives. You can't really measure relationships. You can't measure connections. That's something that is or isn't. So I think the first thing that you do is whether you are in the private sector, you're in service industry, or you're in doing things in ministry, in more closely related ministry places, be comfortable with the reality that success isn't always quantifiable. Jesus spends the vast majority of his life not working in ministry. He spends it working in a carpenter shop. And there's a reason for his work in that particular arena. And I think it has to do with the fact that you need to become comfortable with operating in spaces that are not easily quantifiable.
Wow. It's a really good point, Miguel. And that's hard because we always want to be able to do that. And so that fights against, I think, our natural tendencies. So that's something to think about. Anyone else as well? What are your thoughts on that? Work down, not up. And what do you do in your line of work what does that look like, I guess? Any thought?
What he was just mentioning about, we always want results for everything we do. Before we market a product or before we do anything, we want to look at results and see what kind of results and if it's even worth it. Mm-hmm. And we have to remember that souls are worth it. It doesn't matter the amount of effort that has to go into it. And what I have found, my dad always told us this growing up, and even after my brother and I came on board full time and actually became part of the business, he always said, this is not our business. This is God's business. And we need to remember that whatever we do, it's his leading and guiding, and every day put this business in his hands. And that's easy to say. Mm-hmm. It's easy in theory to know. But, I have seen over the years where God has led, where he has used, so many times we think that in order to work for the Lord, and there's nothing against pastoring or evangelism or any of that, formal evangelism, but we think that you have, at least I had the idea, well, you got to put down your work tools and go to church and do something there to help out, but you realize, and I realize this with ASI too, that the whole focus is sharing Christ in your marketplace. Mm-hmm. That we have capabilities, we have vendors, customers, employees that work for us, that we have opportunities with to share Christ and his love, that our pastor could never reach them because they probably wouldn't come to my church or to an evangelistic series or take Bible studies, but they know me. They know how we operate our business. They know that we're a Christian company. They know that if they have a loved one that's been in a horrible accident or going through a real trial in their life, they'll ask us to pray for them, to remember that. On the bottom of my email, I have the little saying that prayer should be our first response, not our last resort. And that's all it says. It has my name and the contact information and then that little saying underneath. And I've had more than one vendor mention to me, because I do all the purchasing among other things, but mention to me, you guys must be a Christian company. And yes, we are. And he actually opened up about his son, who was a teenager at the time and had been arrested for drugs and was in taking a path in his life that was terrible. And, I was able, because he was talking about prayer and how much that means. And I was actually able to send him a book. Steps to Christ has an amazing chapter in there on prayer. And, send it to him. And those are ways that right where we are, God can use us as a means to reach someone else. And, I think for me, realizing that, God, this is your business. And yes, I'm here to pay my bills, to take home a comfortable income and provide for our family as well. But it's bigger than that. This company and this whole picture is bigger than that. You placed us in a position where we're able to help other people. If you have a business, you have means oftentimes that you can reach out to others and help. And you have that opportunity. And we believe that it's our responsibility to take that opportunity for Jesus and share with others.
Yeah, go ahead, Bernie.
I was just going to say, I love Miguel's point. That's really incredibly powerful. in my space, I lead a team of fundraisers essentially. I work for the largest global international development organization in World Vision, and we a big part of what we do, since we work in the global poverty space, is we do look at the numbers, because we want to see poverty pushed back. We talk about how we're the largest non-governmental provider of clean water. That's a big deal. That's a huge number. And oftentimes on my team, I use scoreboards to motivate my team. I got 8 people that I need to go out there and raise as much money as possible, because there are vulnerable children that live in extreme poverty that we want to see experience fullness of life. And so it's this tough tension that I have to live in, Miguel and everyone else, because I got to hold them to that. And one of the reasons they have a job and they keep their job is that they reach some of those milestones in terms of their fundraising. Yet at the same time, we're a deeply Christian organization. And so I can't make their ultimate sense of value, about the numbers, but I also have to make it about the numbers, right? So I think one of the practical things that I attempt to do is always, I always let them know that I see them as human first, right? They're not just this means to an end. They are flesh and blood. They are real people, and they bear the image of Christ. So I'm always interested in who they are, not just what they're doing. And I believe if I take that sort of position, I will see them get the numbers that I need them to get, right? I'll see them make the impact that I need them to bring to help vulnerable kids. The other thing that I kind of do just practically as a leader is I don't ask them to do anything I'm not willing to do myself. And I also model, World Vision is not a Seventh-day Adventist organization, but I model Sabbath pretty much every Friday, right as I sign off from, we use Microsoft Teams a ton, and so we do communication there. I'll write a little note. Hey guys, I'm about to enter a time of Sabbath for me. Have a great weekend. I'll connect with you on Monday. So I try to model a bit of rest and appropriate rest and Sabbath, and just always humanizing them. And the minute I lose sight of the fact that they're not just this way to meet our goals, that I think I'm in trouble. So some of the dynamics that I work with as someone who leads leads people with quantifiable, being measured by what they bring to the organization. So.
Yeah. I love what you guys have shared with that. And I think the underlining piece in each one of you that you have shared is that your goal and your target is really not, it sounds like it's more about the process and the people versus the income, and that goal that may be quantifiable or not quantifiable, but it's about the people and your relationship with you and how you are ministering to them. If I know ministering and talking about ministry, everyone thinks that's like for the pastors, right? So it's really hard to use that word in the everyday workforce. But Doreen, you're not a pastor, but what you are doing in your line of work is ministry. Even though you're producing something and we can all look at our pants and whatever and see all the stuff that the machines that you make are producing, but it's bigger than your business. Your goals and what you're trying to do are also for the business of heaven. So I want to move on from that. Are there, and Josh, did you have anything you wanted to expand on with that work down, not up principle, with, being a change force in the world and dying to self and putting others first? Is there anything else you would like to add to that?
Yeah, I think those are awesome examples. I think it goes to the practical, very practical, and then I think it's just kind of a mindset. What is your aura? Is it an aura of, I'm out to, sometimes you meet those people who you can just sense they're out to, build up their own kingdom here, or do you have a sense of, hey, I'm here to serve you kind of thing? So it's kind of an internal thing.
Yeah. When we're talking about that, serving others, what do you think we could do a better job at to get our younger generations to desire that more, or for that to be their first thought? I have taught. That's been some of my line of work, and I see so many, even in Christian homes and in Adventist education, where their focus is all about the car they're driving. They want jobs that are going to make money. They want to become famous. There are so many things that are principles that we don't necessarily preach or teach. How do you think we fight that, or help our younger generations better embrace some of these principles that, Josh, you were talking about in your message today, about dying to self, about not going for the dollar, and what do you think we can do differently? Any thoughts on that? Big question.
That's a big question, and I think that's where this kind of ties in with the vision of working in a mindset of abundance, not scarcity, and how when Christ came down, he got our attention. He got the world's attention, and he got our attention by doing something huge. The God of the universe came down as a human with this abundant grace, and he got our attention. And I think that in our way, I think if we want to begin to the generation coming up, we got to get their attention. And I think we need to be doing acts of kindness that are excessive love. Let's go down to San Bernardino, and let's pick a family that's low income. Maybe the dad is handicapped, disabled, can't work anymore. Their roof has fallen. Let's get the community together. Let's send them away for a 2-week holiday and rebuild their home, for them. Let's do something that is bold, that's abundant, that's excess, that lives in this space of where Jesus was. We didn't deserve it, and he came down, and God of the universe gave us life. How can we do something that we're never going to match that, but is in the realm of big, bold, and I love, like, Bernie, you're talking about world vision. You went like that came, I'm sure, I don't know the history and all of world vision, but I'm sure that was born out of let's do something that is going to blow the world away. Let's change the world. And now here you are working for this big organization that was probably born out of something that was, we believe in an abundant God. We want to transfer that abundance and that excess. And so I think that what gets me excited about living in this space is world-changing stuff, is the stuff that's, God got our attention by doing something edgy and bold. We as Christians, we got to kind of step out of our comfort zone into this space into a gospel space. And I think the real gospel space is edgy, it's bold, it does excessive love, abundance of grace. And I think we kind of need to wrap our minds and kind of mess with that a little bit, kind of let that sit with us and kind of see where that takes us. And I think when we do that, the next generation comes up and they're going to be, well, these guys are serious. They're serious about that. We're going to get their attention, I think.
I think another thing is, too, growing up, I didn't realize how much my parents did as far as gifting or helping, because Dad always wanted to be anonymous, but it wasn't until I got into the business, I saw the books and saw what they took home, did the payroll and all that. Saw what they took home and what they actually lived on and what they did with the rest. And don't get me wrong, they didn't sell everything and give everything away. They live in a comfortable home and they have a retirement. However, when I saw what they could have done in addition to that, but chose to give, or even the business itself, how, especially when God blessed and we had booming years in the 90s, I saw what donations were given away. And to me, that made an impact on me. And I realize now, having a child, that Brooke is going to value the things that we value. If we value helping homeless people, if we value every opportunity to help someone else and reach out to someone else, she's going to do the very same. And, I think for me as a parent anyway, looking back on my parents and seeing how they helped and learning what they were doing helped to form my life and my mind and my purpose for how I want to help. And so now in our daughter, it's the same way. And if we can instill in our children the need that's out there and that Jesus has placed us in this world to help that need, even if it's just a few dollars, we have, like everyone else does, I'm sure, just about on every corner, there's somebody there need money or food or whatever, homeless or whatever, with a sign up. And now, my daughter has put books in the car, whether it's Steps to Christ or whatever. And she'll even take her own dollars and put them in and say, Mommy, can you hand this to this guy? He looks like he needs this. So not only is she wanting, that's what we want to instill in our children, is not just, we do want to help them where their needs are, but beyond that, also give them the hope that we have in Jesus and of heaven that he's coming to bring us. So I think examples as parents, I'm just learning that more and more with a child. They value what you value. They like what you like. They don't like, and they shun what you shun as a parent. And it's been very humbling for me. There's some things I feel like I've had to reevaluate for myself to say, do I really want her repeating that, what I'm doing? But that's been a huge, huge lesson for me.
I think that's when Josh is talking about living out of abundance and, doing things that are just huge. And I often think of, everyone has the knowledge in their head. Like, it seems like we can talk a good talk. It's really hard because it's a lot more energy to put that into action, which is really what speaks louder. Doreen, you're just talking about your daughter and how when she sees what you guys have done and what you saw set as an example from your father, that's what really speaks volumes. And Bernie, you and your work business, you were talking about when you sign off to have your Sabbath days rest, that is something that you're not just giving them theory or telling them the Sabbath is a good concept to have. You're just little by little chipping away at giving them this information that may one day they may come to you and start asking, like, what does this all mean? So it gives us an opportunity. But are there any thoughts as far as, do you think we're missing the mark between our theology, our thoughts on work and what that looks like, to what we're actually doing as individuals or as the church? Do you think we're starting to get a little off? Miguel, do you have any thoughts with that? I know there are people that want to hear.
They're asking for Miguel. We better give him Miguel quick.
Yeah, I think so here's just mud on the wall as it would be. First off, I think any theology devoid of praxis is not theology, at least not good theology. And so I don't think it's a disconnect between our ideas and the way we practice or we process these ideas. I think the problem is that we have a set agenda and that people can see through that agenda. And so if your primary reason for being available is that you have an agenda, then it's not going to work. The biggest misnomer I think about young people out there is that they're not interested or invested in changing the world. I've had opportunities to go and do development work in South America with ADRA and to see young people spearheading the concepts of microloans and alpaca banks and all kinds of just earth-shattering ideas that completely shift the paradigm about how one is to help. So the notion that young people are not interested in joining with this great and wonderful, bold, to use Josh's word, plan that God has to change the world is a misnomer. I think the onus is on us older folk to realize that the end all and be all of our existence isn't institutional survival. It's the proclamation of a message. And when we reorient our priorities, whatever our institution is, whether it be a private company or an NGO or a church, when we start recognizing that the primary reason why we're here is not to ensure the survival of the institution, but to promote a vision that recognizes that people are the ultimate end goal, then we will have a message that younger groups and millennials can coalesce around.
Thank you. Beautifully put. I often tell Miguel, I don't know how he words things the way he does, but he has a definite gift with sharing his thoughts and making them very understandable for all of us. Any other thoughts in regards to that? I know, Josh, you mentioned the verse about seeking first the kingdom of God. How, and we need to draw things to a close here, and work is such an interesting topic to talk about. It's not everyone's favorite thing, but before we go to that, I think that it's so interesting how easy it is to have work be in a separate category as everything else in life. And I think maybe that's why it's hard to sometimes talk about, because we talk about work differently than all encompassing. It's in different, how do I even want to say it? It's in a different, it's kind of like church. Some people just show up, do church. It's one day. It doesn't completely go into every day of their life. It's just one day a week, maybe for 1 hour when they show up and go to church. And then that's it. They can turn it off and they're done with it. And for work, and especially Josh, with your message today, it's a bigger picture than just your 8 to 5 day. It's huge. Let's close with talking about seeking first the kingdom of God. We haven't gotten to all of our questions. Time is running out. But what does that look like in work, especially, and we've touched on some of it, especially when your work isn't pastoral ministry or maybe isn't world vision? What would seeking first the kingdom of God in work look like in some of these other professions? How do we do that? What does that look like? Any thoughts? Too big of a question to kind of draw to a close?
I'll just real short. For me, I find that if I don't, like Josh said in his sermon, seek first the kingdom of God, that things just don't measure up. They don't go as smoothly. And I have found in my own life that is the only way that I can stay on track, that I can keep the focus of what I'm really here for. Not to just live life to the best that I can live it and vacation where I want, but to really have that focus and keep that focus, I have to stay on my knees. And that's the only thing that keeps me true to the pole, so to speak, on the right course, so to speak. If I let that go, I can tell in my priorities, not just in work, but even in balancing work, mother, wife, all of that, that I've got to stay on my knees. And my mom has always said, and my dad too, that when you truly put Christ first, like Josh said this morning, when you seek first the kingdom of God, all these things will be added to you. And it's just amazing to me how much clearer my quote vision is when I stay on my knees. And sad to say, I don't always, but I know that's where I come back into focus, is when I'm on my knees.
Yeah, I would add in a similar vein, just, the founder of World Vision is a guy by the name of Bob Pierce. And one of the things that inspired him to create World Vision was a prayer that he wrote in his Bible that says, "Lord, let my heart be broken by the things that break the heart of God." And I think that's an amazing perspective to go into work with, especially the work of ministry. Let my heart continually be broken. And with a broken heart, I probably won't spend my time trying to seek glory for myself, but I'll spend my time doing my absolute best to honor and glorify God. So I think there's a humility and a deep sense of calling and purpose that I enter every day with. And I'm with all of you. I don't always get there with the on my knees part or the moments in prayer. I don't. But I find that when I do, it just seems like I'm working in a rhythm and in a way that's honoring and glorifying to God. So I just want to make sure I'm starting every day with that heart that's open to what God's doing. So.
Beautiful, Bernie and Doreen. Thank you. Any closing thoughts that you would like to share, anyone, with our audience today in regards to work and life? Josh, do you have something that you would like to share? I didn't know if you were getting, it looked like you were getting ready to talk. If not, no worries.
No, you can keep going.
Okay. As we end this conversation, there have been so many good points that have been brought up. And I guess for all of those who are watching, the most important thing to keep in mind along with this conversation is that God has made you very special. He has made you unique, and he has placed you in a work environment that he can use you. He's gifted you. He's given you special qualities that he wants to be used for his kingdom and for his honor and for his glory. And so don't sell yourself short that what you do does not matter, and who God has surrounded with you, even those difficult personalities. Don't sell it short that it's all a mistake. Know that God has a purpose and a plan for you in the line of work that you are in, and that he will equip you. And he has given you an example, like Josh has said in his message. He has given you an example of what it looks like to be a Christian in the work environment, and what he wants and is calling you to do for his service and to expand his kingdom. So let's just stop here with or end with a quick word of prayer. And let's bow our heads. Father God, thank you so much for this conversation that we have had today. Lord, may we keep in mind that we are all vessels and agents for you. May we remember that we need to keep you first. We need to stay on our knees. We need to work down, not up. We need to remember the abundance that you have given, and to dream big, and to let you just take what you have given us and expand it. Like Josh mentioned, the feeding of the 5,000. There was a kid with hardly anything, but in God's hands, the little that we have to offer, he can expand and make into big things. So Lord, we give you our hearts. Thank you for this discussion today. And may we be able to go and walk boldly in the areas that you have assigned us for your kingdom. In Jesus' name, amen. Mm-hmm. We love all of you guys, and we're so grateful that you tuned in today. We hope that you have an incredible rest of your Sabbath. Thank you to Bernie and to Doreen and to Pastor Josh and Pastor Miguel for joining us today. And we will see you again here next week at Q&A. Happy Sabbath.